should know is that we are made up of primarily, again, volunteers. We have one part-time coordinator, and the people who sit around the table are legislators. We have some town officials, people from the business community, mostly human service and mental health providers. And the one thing that we all have in common is that we are passionate about improving services in Washington County. And actually, when the coalition first came together, it was part of our mission was we need to educate people about what's happening in the county because so many dollars were being spent in the core cities in Rhode Island, and we needed to prove that Washington County needed resources and needed services. So it really came out of that the coalition was developed. What we are most known for and why I'm here today is to talk about the needs assessment. Every 3 years, the coalition puts together data to help paint the story, paint the picture of what's happening to kids and families in Washington County. This is our 4th report. We released it back in December, and I will have a copy that I will get to the assistant superintendent. I forgot. I apologize. I didn't bring it with me today. And when we do our annual forum every year, the theme of that forum always is, and how are the children? This is a theme based on their traditional greeting from the Maasai tribe in Africa that really shows how important kids' well-being is in that tribe. And I will be asking you the question at the end of this brief presentation, how do you feel the children of North Kingstown are doing? So first, to paint the picture, we have to look at population. Because census data is only available every 10 years, and the 2010 census data was just released, we're still sifting through that information. But I think what's important to know is the census has told us that the population actually in North Kingstown hasn't changed very much. We had about a 0.6% increase in our overall population, which is only about 160 residents. So what this does have, this just breaks down kids 0 through 18 from the 1990 to the 2000 census. Looking at the 2010 census, we know the population in South Kingstown is actually higher than North Kingstown, and Westerly is lower. So I just wanted to put that out there so when we're looking at the data and we're looking at the towns, you can kind of compare how is North Kingstown doing to some of our neighbors. So the previous census noted a significant increase in population in 2000, and we think that this was the development that was happening in South County. During this time, we know that poverty rates rose. Unfortunately, we don't have the actual family income data to support that, so what we look at instead are a number of indicators that can tell us how the overall well-being of families and the economic status of our families are. So first, ask the question, are our families economically secure? And one of the ways that we look at this is looking at food insecurity. We know that food insecurity is a major issue as our families in North Kingstown have suffered due to the economic decline. And record numbers are seeking help from area food pantries and getting assistance that they never had to before. As a service provider, I can tell you I'm working with families all the time that are accessing services for the first time in their lives, families that never thought that they'd be going to a food pantry, families that were donating to food pantries every year and were now at the door every month looking for support. These are families that were always maybe struggling to make ends meet but could make it happen, but because of a lost job or lost wages, decreased of hours, they're not able to do that anymore. We know that food insecurity causes problems for our children because children who are hungry, we know that they cannot learn as well or as fast as other children. We know that hungry children have more behavioral problems. We know that these children are more at risk for hospitalization, and we know that they cannot adapt to environmental stressors as easily. Looking at the number of children who are receiving food stamps or the SNAP program, from 2001 and 2009, you can see the increase of enrollment in North Kingstown from 357 children to over 600 children. Countywide, there has been an 87.8% increase in children who are receiving food stamps since we started collecting this data back in 2001. North Kingstown, since 2001, has seen a 78% increase in the number of children who are receiving food stamps. And we know food stamps doesn't cover the entire month's worth of groceries. So although families are accessing this service, what we know is that food stamps really only provide enough food for 2 or 3 weeks. So we have families, parents that are having to decide what's the quality of food that I'm going to purchase for my children versus the quantity of food that I can afford that we need to survive. And those are two very different numbers. Looking at the children enrolled in free and reduced school meal programs, there has been a 38% increase since 2001. And just looking at North Kingstown, we've seen a 47% increase in the number of children who are enrolled in this program. Now, if you look at North Kingstown, again, knowing that our population numbers being different from Westerly and South Kingstown, our numbers are higher than South Kingstown, although their population is higher than ours. So over 800 children are enrolled in the free and reduced school meal program. But this really only paints half of the picture. When you look at the number, you also have to analyze the data a little bit. These are kids who are enrolled, but it's not counting children who are actually receiving and going through those lines getting that program. Older children are often reporting that they're not utilizing this benefit because of the embarrassment or fear that people will know that they're one of those kids who are getting these meals. So we know that these are the number of children who are enrolled in this program, but we can guess that there's probably many children who are skipping meals, not receiving this benefit, and then you have to think about the impact that that is having on the rest of their day going through school without eating anything. So these are the number of children receiving LIHEAP. LIHEAP is the Low-Income Heating and Energy Assistance Program that many families are continuing to benefit from. Since enrollment in LIHEAP has increased 49% since we began tracking this information. In North Kingstown, there's been a 79% increase in children since we started tracking this information in 2001. So over 465 children are benefiting from that program, which gives families grants to help pay for heating in their homes. Again, this doesn't pay the entire winter's heating. This just offsets some of that for them. What I have been hearing is that LIHEAP is coming under fire and that will likely it will likely receive some cuts. I'm hoping that doesn't come to pass, but that's sort of the reality that we're looking at. Everything is going to be cut. And we have to think about the impact that that is going to have on families. Last year, when I was a clinical supervisor in a program, we did all home-based work. I had many clinicians that would come and report to me that families were actually canceling their visits because they needed to leave their homes because they didn't have heat and they were staying in friends' and relatives' apartments. So we know that families who don't have heat, it's not just that they're cold, it's also that they're losing access to services. It's the kids that are missing school because they've had to go over to a different town to spend the night so that they're not cold. It also makes me think of kids who are waking up all night long because they're cold. There's not enough heat in the home. And what does that disruptive sleep cause the next day when they're supposed to be in school paying attention and learning? So next we ask, are our children healthy? And this number looks at the number of children who are receiving medical assistance, such as Right Care or Medicaid. And this number continues to grow as well. Despite increased premiums and stricter documentation standards in the application process, we continue to see the number rising. All of these programs have had an increase in about 25% since we started tracking this information in 2001. And just in the last year, enrollment has been up almost 9%. So again, looking at North Kingstown numbers, in 2009, we had over 1,300 children who are receiving medical assistance. So it's a good thing that kids are accessing medical, but what does this tell us? It tells us that families have less and less income, which is why they're becoming eligible for this program. So they are getting the medical assistance, but it's only because they're in a worse off situation economically. And I wish I could talk more, but for brevity's sake, if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can let you know that just because families receive medical assistance doesn't mean they can always access services. And there's lots of barriers that I can talk about kids who are trying to get mental health services. I could be up here all night, so I will move on. Or you can invite me back and I can chat about that another time. So we do have some good news. Looking at the rates of teen births among young teens in Washington County, it has been on the decline. Our North Kingstown numbers are right now the second highest in the county. We know that kids who are giving birth at a young age are at risk for dropout. And what dropout means that they are not going to go on to get education, they are going to have low-wage jobs, and they are more likely to be poor. So looking at these numbers, we know that these kids are greatly at risk. This looks at teens who are ages 15 to 19, so looking at more young girls. Although 70% of Rhode Island births to teens are occurring in the core cities, again, Washington County is not immune to this issue and still needs time and attention paid to it. Almost a third of these pregnancies did occur in Westerly, but if you look again, North Kingstown, our numbers are high, second highest when you look across the county. So let's talk about housing, because this has a huge economic impact on our families. The cost of home ownership continues to be at a grasp for many of our families, and with home ownership comes the sense of security. Since 1999, North Kingstown has seen a 162% increase in the average price of a home. Now, I'm sure if I asked you to raise your hand or asked the audience to raise their hand, if I said, well, how many of us know someone who's lost a job or has lost significant wages in the last year? Most of us would raise our hand knowing, someone in our friend, a neighbor, or a family member has lost a job. What this tells us is that a family who might have been making $80,000 a year and paying a $2,000 a month mortgage can no longer afford to do so. And we had about 46 foreclosures in North Kingstown last year. Looking at renting, renting continues to be, the rates are ridiculously high. For an average two-bedroom apartment in Rhode Island was over $1,200 a month. That's up 55% from 2001. The rule that housing uses is that your housing can't be anything more than 30% of your income to be considered affordable. So that means a family has to earn approximately $48,000 a year to be able to afford an average two-bedroom rent. The issue, again, with the economy and the way that it stands is many of our families are one crisis away from eviction. If the car breaks down and you need to replace the brakes, or you need major motor work done on it, if you lose your job, if you are ill, if you have a family member that you need to take care of, you are 1 month away from homelessness. And as a result, we are seeing a growing number of homeless children. So these were the latest numbers that were reported for homeless students in North Kingstown. What I'd like to spend a little bit more time and attention on is really the impact that homelessness has on children, whether the number be 189 or whether the number be 50. Those children are still struggling, and they have more obstacles against them than children who don't have to worry about homelessness issues. We need to think about children and the shame that they have, and will people know I'm living at a shelter? Will people know that I've been staying at my grandma's house for the last 2 weeks? Will people know that I have to share a bed with my sibling because I don't have my own room? We think about childhood lost. There are no birthday parties. There are no running around in the backyard when you're homeless. And there's that feeling of where are we going to have to move next? Many shelters are short-term shelters. And also the homeless numbers are really hard to track because families don't often report that they're homeless. If they're staying with a relative 1 month, if they're staying at someone's rental for just 2 months, but they know they have to move out soon. When I moved into South County, I was shocked when I found out how many families live in the campgrounds in the summertime because they're kicked out of their apartment for 2 or 3 months because families can get more money for that from vacationers, or families that just need to live in the campgrounds because it's cheaper because they can save money for a few months. And that's not a place where a child should be raised. So looking at the numbers and asking ourselves, are our children safe? Again, North Kingstown numbers are quite high. These are the number of children who are witnessing domestic violence. From 2007 to 2009, over 100 children in North Kingstown were reported to have witnessed domestic violence. We know that these numbers are low because not all domestic violence incidents get reported. And so we can only imagine what these actual numbers are, but these were the ones that were actually documented that they could report. Thinking again about the impact that this has on our children and on our students, Kids that are witness to domestic violence or who have been abused and neglected often suffer from PTSD and anxiety, but we label them as oppositional defiant. And they get, labeled through the school system, labeled through the mental health system, and often don't get the services that they actually need. Because if you are diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, you are not going to get the treatment for anxiety, which is probably truly what's driving many of these children's behaviors. So we're getting kids who have negative impact from this and then who end up not getting the services that they actually need. And then we wonder why kids are inattentive, why they're not handing in homework assignments, why they're not completing things. If they're living in a home with domestic violence, they have a pretty heavy load to bear every day. What's going to happen today? Who's going to get hurt today? Am I going to get hurt? Is mom going to get hurt? What's going to happen when I walk through the door? Looking at the number of indicated cases of child abuse and neglect, and again, just being careful of the definition of this, these are not the number of children who total have been abused and neglected. These are just the number of cases where it was reported. DCYF went out and said there was enough information to indicate and open that case. So again, these numbers are much higher. These are just the actual numbers of situations where it was reported, it was investigated, and there was enough information to say that abuse or neglect was happening. Looking at North Kingstown numbers again, 137 from 2007 to 2009, the second highest in the county. Looking at out-of-home placement. So these are children who are removed from their home due to abuse and neglect and placed in either kinship care, which is relative care, foster homes, shelters, residential homes, or correction facilities, or mental health placements. So in 2002, we had 187 children who were taken out of our communities, out of schools, placed somewhere else. In 2010, that number was down to 49. So on the surface, I look at this and say, well, this is great. Less children are being taken out of their home. More children are being maintained in the community. But perhaps it's the cynic in me. Part of me wonders, are there children who are being kept in homes that are abusive or neglectful? And is that why the numbers are low? Is it that kids are safer, or is it that kids continue to be at risk? And I can't fully answer that. More good news, relatively few Washington County youth are getting in trouble with the law and placed at the training school. But again, North Kingstown numbers are the second highest in the county. In 2009, we had 14 youth who were placed at the Rhode Island training school. So these are kids who, if they were in school, they were removed from school, placed at the training school, or perhaps kids that are not fully getting the educational services that they should be getting. We know that the incidence of disabilities, children with special needs in Washington County, continues to be pretty much the same as the rest of the state. But what I want to highlight here is the limited access to some services. I know that Cozy's going to come and talk about the amazing services that North Kingstown is lucky enough to have. But countywide, we definitely would say that there is a lack of respite services for families with children with special needs. There is a lack of HBTS services, which are home-based therapeutic services, where your child can get intensive home-based care. And these services, lack of services, not only place a strain on families and on parents, but children can't reach their maximum capacity, some of them, without getting these types of services. And there continues to be a lack and very, very long wait lists. Changes in certain services have also had an impact on families. There have been cuts in Kate's program, which provides intensive mental health supportive services in families' homes, as well as cuts in HBTS. So this results in more limited access to care. And finally, I would highlight that transportation, because we are a rural community in general, any family that does not have reliable transportation is at risk for not getting appropriate services. That we don't have a good bus system here. You have to travel more than a few miles to get the things that you need. And so that's another risk that Washington County has in general. So I've shared some facts and statistics with you, and so I will leave you with a question to answer, and how are the children of North Kingstown? If anyone is interested in learning more about the coalition, our website is there. The data book is available online, and if you become a member, then you can get the full data book, which has much more information than what I went through today. You can get that free with your membership. Thank you.
Thank you. We're up and running.
Mr. Welch, can I just, Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Can I just say something quickly?
Yes, Dr.
I saw Ms. Duffy speak last year at the Washington County Coalition for Children breakfast when Candy Lodge was receiving an award as a champion for children. And I was really blown away by the presentation that she just gave tonight, and a similar one that she gave then. And so I had asked her to come and speak to this group and to our community about, I've been living in North Kingstown for 16 years myself, and I was completely unaware of a lot of the statistics she presented tonight. And I think it's important for all of us to be aware of this. And also to know Barbara Sweeney and the work that she is doing with the COSY program. Donna Thompson as well is here tonight. And I'd like for her to talk a little bit about some of the programs that North Kingstown has in light of, the population that we are, dealing with in North Kingstown. So I wanted to say that before the presentation this evening, but I was out making a phone call for our technology purposes, so.
Thank you, Dr. O'Jay. Was there something that you wanted to say, ma'am?
She's going to follow up.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to be as brief as possible because we're running out of time. Thank you.
While Dr. O'Jay is getting that ready, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Barbara Sweeney. I work for the COSY program, or the Child Opportunity Zone. And I'm just here to give you a little bit of a brief overview of our history and the scope of services that we provide, some of which directly address some of the gaps that Lori identified in terms of services needed in North Kingstown, as well as some of the more universal services that we provide across the district. Again, I represent the Child Opportunity Zone, or COSY, sometimes referred to as COS or COS. It is COSY. It doesn't kind of agree phonetically. Quick background. We've actually been around for almost 20 years. Conceived in 1994 in response to a needs assessment, specifically in the Davisville neighborhood, what we came to call the Davisville Learning Community, which has changed somewhat over the years with the reconfiguration, particularly this year. There really is no more Davisville Learning Community. We've been absorbed into Quidnesset and Forest Park, but that's really still the heart of our service provision in town. We are one of 10 COSY sites, actually now 11 in Rhode Island, one of only 2 in Washington County, the other one being Westerly, and I think the data that Lori showed substantiate why there's such a need in this part of the state. The rest of the sites are in the East Bay. There's one in Middletown, Bristol Warren, Newport, as well then in the core cities, Woonsocket, Providence, Pawtucket, Central Falls, and Cranston. So we are a little bit different, and people hear, oh, North Kingstown, why are they a COSY site? But we were founded and continue to exist to serve the needs of families in pockets within the town and throughout the town as well. About 5 years ago, we went from just being the COSY to the COSY Family Learning Partnership, or FLP, to really reflect the broader scope of services. We don't just serve children. Children tend to exist in a family setting with some parents and other relatives. And our services really are designed to meet the needs of children and families. So we really wanted our name to reflect that. So sometimes you'll hear us referred to as COSY or COSY FLP, or the Family Learning Partnership. We began with 1 part-time staff person based out of Davisville Elementary. We are now 16 strong, full and mainly part-time employees across 7 specific programs. And 7 doesn't sound like a whole lot. Those are very umbrella programs. We have quite a range of projects and activities under each of those. As I mentioned, we provide services to specific Davisville neighborhoods, more so in the past, but a number of our programs are universal. They enroll families and serve families all throughout North Kingstown. And our focus of work really is on supporting at-risk or risk-positive students and families. Our programming carries 3 insurances or 3 guarantees. We hope to help all children enter school ready to learn and succeed. We hope to help families gain the tools and support they need to confidently raise healthy, empowered children, and to really involve the greater community in sustaining healthy families through education and involvement. Very quickly, our programs. 2 of our biggest programs are what we call our family centers and our 21st Century Community Learning Centers, or 21C, sometimes how we refer to them, located at Quidnesset Elementary School and at Davisville Middle School. Our original site was at Davisville Elementary. We consider the family center to be the family's place in school. Students have a place in school, teachers have a place in school, but often there's no place for families to go. We have a physical space in both of our partner schools for families to come in, talk to one of our staff members, get information, resources, register their child for an after-school program, or simply say, gosh, I'm really having a problem with my child's teacher. I don't know how to address it. Can you help me? Or I really need information on how to get to the food bank. I don't know where it is. Do we have a food bank? And our staff can help with that. Continuing, we have the NK Connect, which is short for North Kingstown Kindergarten Connection. It's our preschool program designed for 4-year-olds to ensure that risk-positive 4-year-olds have access to a very high-quality year before they enter kindergarten. We have a wonderful program. It's run out of the daycare space over on Navy Drive. They have a huge amount of parent engagement. Families are there constantly, feeling very welcome and part of their child's curriculum. Parents as Teachers is one of our universal programs, meaning it's open to all families in North Kingstown with children ages birth through 5. It is an international, scientifically based early childhood program. It provides home-based education. Certified parent educators go to parents' homes and talk with them about their child's development, what's normal, what might be a concern. As well, we have group activities, play groups, mommy and me kind of drop-in exercise times. We can bring in a guest speaker. We call that drop-in and chat, where a speech therapist, for example, might come in and talk to parents about what's normal about child speech development, what might be some red flags. Child Outreach is a program that many of you might be familiar with if your own children went through it years ago or even recently. It's our district's preschool screening program, All children in town, ages 3 through 5, are eligible and need to be screened for developmental, socio-emotional growth and development prior to entering school. And we capture about 500 children a year, ages 3 through 5, across that. Much of the work is done in cooperation with area preschools. Our team will go out and they'll screen 40 kids in one day. Parenting development is sort of a broad term for workshops and opportunities for parents to gain more information, to feel supported in their role as their parent's first and most influential teacher. We might offer book groups, bring in a guest speaker. We had Barbara Colarosa, who's a national author and speaker. She came a few years ago to present some information on bullying. Lastly is our Door to the District program. This is one of our newer programs. Holly Ayotte, who's our preschool liaison, coordinates this. And it's a great first opportunity for parents when they're entering the school system with a preschooler who's involved with the special ed program, which, as you can imagine, can be incredibly overwhelming and intimidating for some parents. And Holly is literally the door to the district. She's the face that they see when they come in for their first meeting to say, how are you? Can I answer any of your questions? What are you concerned about? And then following the meeting, did you understand everything? What do you need now? What can I help you with? So she takes an occasion that could be fearful and overwhelming and full of anxiety for parents and really helps to set them on the right course as they enter the school department. I wanted to give you a very quick snapshot view of what we do over the course of a week. So I picked last week. Turns out last week wasn't a great week, mainly because we were down one day. We didn't have school on Friday. So some of these numbers are a little bit artificially low. But I hope you get a sense of what we do over the course of an average week, if there is such an average week in the COSI. 8 child outreach screenings doesn't seem like a whole lot. We're near the end of the year. Mary and her team have done most of the screenings. Again, keep in mind they do about 500 over the course of the year. So these are just sort of drop-ins who are getting picked up at the end of the year. In our extended learning our extended learning opportunities, that 21C program I mentioned at Quidnesset in the middle school, 197 students at Quidnesset. It's pretty impressive when you consider that's more than half the school population. Participated in any range of activities from homework club to mad science, fitness, whatever we can offer as that are activities that are tied to the curriculum that really help students extend their learning and have valuable time after school. Likewise, at Davisville Middle School, we had over 100 students there. I mentioned that the Connect program, there are 17 students who are enrolled on a regular basis in that program. Parent involvement opportunities. We did some science fair support for parents at Quidnesset. We engaged with a parent who's actually a science teacher. She came in and provided support to other parents who needed materials and help getting ready for the science fair. I'm working with a group of parents at Quidnesset on a program called Solid Foundations to upgrade our parent involvement policies, and we had a couple of parent involvement activities over at our Connect program, including Dr. Thornton, but I think that was the week before where he was a guest reader. They also did a garden cleanup with parents. So those are just an example of a few of the things that we would do on a regular basis. I mentioned the Parents to Teachers Play Group. We hold those over at Davisville Elementary School. We had 2 of those, about 12 home visits last week by our parent educators into the homes, and 5 preschool meetings for that Door to the District program. Normally that would be about double because the meetings take place on Mondays and Fridays. There were no meetings last Friday. And in a sort of unusual week, we had we coordinated along with Dr. Ajay a Title I monitoring visit at Quidnesset Elementary. That normally doesn't happen every week, thank goodness. This is the contact information. I'll be happy to share a hard copy of this, and that's a very quick overview of what we do in the COSI. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Welch, while our last person is just setting up Ms. Ambelot, I could just give a few words to kind of segue this. As you know, all the schools are doing different things to get students to achieve more. In Forest Park's case, I first saw something maybe 6 months ago, their use of what's called data boards, and it really struck me as to, just a very simple, straightforward protocol that really is getting some results. So I had asked Ms. Ambelot and her team to come here back in December. I waited till now to actually have them come. So I know we are pressed for time, but I really just wanted to have Ms. Ambelot come forward with her team and present. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for the honor to present tonight and showcase the work at Forest Park, because while I will be presenting, we have the honor with John Garcia, Ellen Zykowski, and Christina Nicoletti, who are teachers at my school. As you can see, a lot of Forest Park staff showed up tonight because this is something that we have kind of organically grown in our school to be something very successful and very powerful. We kind of laughed because I first launched the idea to my staff in September, and they looked at me, and it was a brand new staff, and they said, "We don't know what you're talking about." And I said, well, that's okay, because let me think about it, because these aren't my boards, these will be your boards, and they will show our growth in students and be a visual snapshot of where we need to take our students. Because as we've heard tonight, there are a lot of things that affect our students, but we know we can make an impact if we kind of set a goal and look at where our students are and where we would like to take them. So why did Forest Park, how did we get there? Data boards are mentioned often in literature and education, but they're also mentioned in literature in a manufacturing setting. And they're really an organized way of displaying data in a workable manner. We brought some samples for you tonight, but we also have pictures up here because our samples, we made the decision at Forest Park that we were not going to code our children or number them somehow. We were going to use their names because luckily there are 272 kids at Forest Park, and we know every single one that walks the halls of Forest Park and where we need to take them next. So Forest Park staff created boards that show the track and track student progress, and it really became a chance to look at how students have grown over time and where we need to take our teaching in our classrooms to help them improve. Data boards are flexible and unique to each grade level team. If you see tonight, you'll see samples of the data board because it's not something that I could give to my staff. It was something that they had to think about what data is important to their students and where do they have to go next and what needs to be on their boards. data boards are an integral part of our differentiated instruction blocks. And that might be a term that you've heard before, but at Forest Park and at all the other elementary schools, we're really looking at taking 2 periods a week or even more to say, what do our students need to know in a specific skill, and grouping them so that we are teaching at that level. And this year at Forest Park, we've also done cross-grade grouping, and we've had a great deal of success with that. So, as I've said earlier tonight, that I will be presenting with my staff. I'm going to let Christina Nicoletti explain a little bit more about how we use data boards at Forest Park.
So the first slide we have here, first, good evening. I'm Christina Nicoletti. I teach first grade at Forest Park. But right here we're looking at why our data is important. And it's important because it shows us where our students have been and where we can take them and where they're moving towards. Also, on our data boards, it provides a clear path to our interventions. So we can just take a look at our boards, take a quick snapshot and say, I see that concept. You know, we need to work more on that. Let's do a group together and work on that concept. It also helps with those isolates, those outliers. So we're not just looking at the students who are struggling, but we're looking at the areas of great strength. And we're saying, wow, great job, you have that. Let's move you forward so that you're continuing. And the important thing is that all students are moving forward in a positive manner. And that's the most important thing. Also, assisting in the investigation of best teaching practices and providing teachers the opportunity to discuss. When we get together for our staff meetings and we have all of our boards up and we're looking around and sharing ideas, and it's one of the best things, and it's that workable data that is really important to say, you know, this is no longer just a first grade or a fourth grade issue. Like Mrs. Amelot had said, we've put together groups across the grade level. So you may have a group of fourth and fifth graders together that are working towards the same concept. So that's important because we get to have that rich discussion with one another and use each other's experience, which has been monumental for me as a new teacher. And also the last point there, that the data is collected, it's an investment in the research. We know that the Ames Web programs and some of the programs that we're using for assessments it takes a lot of financial resources to get them up and running. And it's important that we're using those data points in our classrooms, in our schools, and we're really looking at those charts in a true manner to move forward with our students and their progress. So data is very important at Forest Park School. How it's collected, across the district, we have so many different ways that data is collected. We have standardized assessments, and we have some informal assessments, our benchmarks. So all of those things are so broad that we really needed to come up with a way of how we're going to organize all of this stuff so we can make it work for us. The second bullet there talks about teachers relying mostly on informal assessments to guide their instruction, and that's absolutely true, as well as their common formative assessments, their CFAs, and their benchmarking. And that is some of the data that we have up on our data boards. But I know, speaking from my grade level, we've actually used our data boards to create our own CFA, or common formative assessment, on a particular topic that was maybe struggling, our students were struggling in, or something where we needed more clarity and more data points to say this is working, or what do we need to do differently. And you could see here that both of the informal and formal assessments gauge students' progress towards the standards, but like I said before, so many broad areas of collecting data. How do we organize it? And that's when we use our data boards. Some of the data points we have on there are Fontes and Pinnell reading levels for running records. We have our Ames Web fluency and comprehension program. We have NEWA and NECAP, as in addition to some of the other programs that we're using, such as Rocket Math and those, to move forward. But the important thing, I think, for this is that we organize our data so that it's meaningful and so that we can actually work on it. And one of the best things about what we've done with our data boards is keeping the older data in the back. So just slipping in new data in the front. So every now and then you can take a look back and say, oh, look at where we've come from. This is wonderful. Look at all of the growth that we've made. And so we can celebrate those successes and also move forward in a way where we're saying, great job, but let's keep on trucking. So I'm going to hand it on over to Mr. Garcia. Yeah,
Good evening. My name is Mr. Garcia. I'm a fifth grade teacher at Forest Park, and the reason why I'm here tonight is to share some insights about reading data boards that we've actually created at Forest Park. Being a fifth grade teacher, the data board has given me, it serves as a valuable tool for me. It helps me to evaluate my instruction and focus on my students' individual needs. I use the data board for a lot of information. It drives my reading instruction in the areas of fluency and comprehension. It also enables me to analyze student results from the Ames web and provide necessary instruction to students in the areas of weaknesses. It sets priorities to make sure students are receiving necessary instruction. It also allows me to collect and access the data from differentiated blocks and small groups to address student needs and strengths. Overall, the data board is a resourceful part of my instruction. If you look kindly on the right-hand side, it does, like I mentioned, I kind of clearly, briefly gave a synopsis of all the criteria right there. It provides information on students' Fontes and Cornell reading levels. It clearly shows student proficiency and growth on Ames web and assessments. Some grade-level teams brought forth writing data to focus on data-driven writing instruction to assess benchmarks. NECAP scores in grades 2 through 5 and NEWA scores included on data boards in grades 3 through 5. An example of the data board that I have here to share with you is a third grade data board that's actually produced by our colleagues at Forest Park. Highlighted are some areas here. NECAP scores, Ames web, and for those who are not familiar with Ames web, it's a reading comprehension benchmark progress monitoring system that some schools have adopted in North Kingstown, and we're currently using it in Forest Park. It's based on 3 criteria areas. One of the areas it's focused on is benchmarks, which is given by 3 times a year by teachers, the fall, spring, and winter. And that is to basically do a universal screening and also evaluate progress monitoring across the year accountability. The second part that it focuses on is strategic monitoring, which you're able to monitor at-risk students on a monthly, evaluate the effectiveness of instructional changes. The third one is progress monitoring. Teachers write individual annual goals and monitor them more frequently to address students' needs and strengths and weaknesses. Across the board, no pun intended, the data boards provide results and valuable information for everyone to improve instruction. Even though the data boards are different from different grade levels, because as you have here, third grade is going to be a little bit different than fifth grade. First grade will be a little bit different than across the board. We do share a common goal overall at Forest Park, and that's basically to improve teacher instruction, also student achievement. Thank you. Oh, and excuse me, I'm still going on. I'm sorry. There are some examples here. Like I just mentioned, the grade 1 is on the left-hand side. It's hard to see, but they have different criteria that they focus on. Again, the areas that I mentioned, grade 4 and grade 3. But those are some examples, and as you can see also on the screen, they're all different based on levels and student needs.
Hello. I'm just going to talk briefly about our math data boards and just kind of highlight some of the data points that we've collected on our boards. One of the most valuable data points that I've been able to collect, and I think all of us feel that way, is our proficiency in the benchmark concepts. And you can see one example up here in the center of the board this is a first grade data board. And what we have found very helpful was to list all of the benchmark concepts in math along the top of our grid or chart, and the students' names along the side. And this has been a really fluid chart. This one happens to be all on the board. I'm a 5th grade teacher, and John and I, we created separate spreadsheets for our classes. So we've been able to very easily, when we feel that a child has become proficient in a concept, simply check off their name. And we can access these boards, so at any point throughout the quarter when we feel, whether it's 5 students or the majority of students, we can just go check off that they're proficient in a concept. And that's allowed us to reflect on particular concepts that individual students need some extra attention with, and we can target that through small group instruction, or also any concepts that the entire class might need a review on. We've also used this board to inform our differentiated instruction groups. Just recently, as I mentioned, the 4th and 5th grade got together and realized we had a common concept in common that we really needed to focus on and spend a little more time on, so we were able to create the cross-grade differentiated instruction based on that, and it really evolved just by looking at our concept chart. So that's been very helpful. The other thing that we highlight is our Rocket Math progress, and Rocket Math is a program that we just recently took on, and 4 out of the 5 North Kingstown schools or elementary schools are using this, and it's a very motivating program to help students with their fluency in math facts. Each student is working toward their own personal goal on their own level of addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division facts. And we've been able to highlight that on our board, and we've seen tremendous growth from this program, and we're really hoping that with continued use of it in the upcoming years, we'll see an increased automaticity of their math facts. We have also this year just added the Ames Web Math program, and this is something that we're really exploring this year to see how it aligns with our standards, and also trying to use this as a progress monitoring or strategic monitoring tool. And on our math boards, we also have our NECAP scores and our NEWA scores. The NECAP scores are really on here as a summative assessment. We do look at it as one of our multiple data points to really get a big picture of each student. While it's great to have our concept chart, we really want to look at all of these data points in one area and see a complete view of each individual child, each class in our school, and each grade level as a whole. So we've really been able to look at that, use all of the data points, and really tie together how our classes are doing. And this is, again, just the first grade board up there, and it's organized student data by concept. We were able to use this to build our differentiated groups and also set up any small group instructions in our classroom. And I know a lot of that's been happening throughout the grades. And this really has assisted us in adjusting our teaching methods. It's helped really target some areas of weakness in our classrooms, but also celebrate the success of those students who are becoming proficient. And again, here are 3 samples of kindergarten, grade 2, and grade 5. And what's really nice, and it's hard to see from a distance, but while all of the grades really have those same data points on their board, they're displayed differently. It's really what the teacher feels is the most workable, most manageable, and most useful for them. And from the first quarter to the third quarter, these boards have taken on a completely new life, and we've really used them at many, many times throughout the quarter and just feel that they've been essential to our teaching this year. And now our last piece of this is where are we headed from here with them?
We did have a wonderful turnout of Forest Park staff that was able to make it tonight, but for those of our colleagues and our staff members that weren't able to be here, we asked if they would like to give us some of their thoughts on data boards as a whole. So these are a couple of things that were said about our data boards. The first quote comes from the first grade team at Forest Park. And it says that our data boards have enabled our team to focus our instruction. On our boards, we can easily see the trends between our classes and use the areas of strength and weakness to engage all of our students, regardless of the classroom teacher. Through the formation of our DI blocks, our students have directly benefited. And that's something that I want to hit home, is that it's regardless of the classroom teacher. These students are no longer Miss Nicoletti's students or Mrs. Glover's students or this. They are our students, and we all take responsibility for them in their learning, and we make it our point to make sure that we're reaching them in their DI blocks or wherever they're falling short or excelling, so we can keep them moving ahead. The second quote here comes from our music teacher at Forest Park, Michelle Haskell, and she says the data boards provide specialists with information, with informative, easy-to-read data that helps us differentiate instruction in our classrooms. So oftentimes there's a divide between specialists and classroom teachers, and these data boards have really broken down that barrier, because anybody on the staff can go in, take a peek at our boards, and see, you know what? That student, is falling down on his counting. Gee, maybe that's why he can't keep up when, we're counting in music or something like that, So it really does help correlate strengths and weaknesses that students are having in the classroom as well as in their specialist classroom. The next quote comes from Sue Evans. She's a paraprofessional at Forest Park. She says that she found the data boards to be a great visual insight to the students' math and reading progression. You can also see the few students who needed some extra assistance to help bring them up to speed with the others. And I think that's important for paras, because a lot of time we do utilize them in many different classrooms. And, keeping up on student data is tough enough when you have a classroom worth of students, but then to go between different grade levels, it's nice to have a nice snapshot of where that student is and where they might need some extra assistance. And lastly, we have a quote from Danielle Sutton. She's a long-term substitute in 4th grade at Forest Park. And she says that as a long-term sub, the data boards were an efficient and effective way for her to get a snapshot of the 23 students she was going to begin to teach. She's easily able to see the trends across the certain areas that would help guide her teaching strategies, as well as the areas she wanted to focus on for individual learning. And I think that that's what really speaks volumes, because if you can have a teacher who's not familiar with those 23 students come in, look at this data organized in a workable way, and feel comfortable to then move forward to teach them, that let us know that we really did organize that data in a way that is positive, and that's really helpful for teachers and students alike.
Well, you can tell Forest Park is very excited about data, and we really are, and it hasn't been an overwhelming task at Forest Park. We really had a way to look at and manage this data, and I know many of the terms you've heard tonight, you've heard different presentations on, but I can see from your faces you hear the excitement in my staff, and that's how they look at making sure students achieve. And our next step to this was saying, well, if we're informally setting these goals, how are we going to improve our process about looking at that data and saying, where can we take our kids? Because that's really what it's all about. And so we introduced the 30-day plan. And so as I introduced the data boards the first time, and they said, well, we can do this. This is okay. We can manage this. And this is going to be workable. I introduced the 30-day plan just within the last 2 weeks, and we thought it was going to be a preview in March, but now you actually get to see that we have 30-day plans in every single grade at Forest Park now. And what they are is a clear path for our interventions of what we're going to lay out, because oftentimes in a school you're saying, well, we could do this, or maybe I have an idea about that. Well, who's going to do it? When are they going to do it by? And what do we hope it's going to achieve? So I developed a 30-day tracking sheet for our staff. And if you look up there, we have where we put the grade, what's our objective, what's our overall objective to improve something, who are the team members that are going to make this happen. And we really, truly are team members at Forest Park. And so how will we know that our students achieve this objective? What is their current performance, and what's our targeted performance for them in the next 30 days? And then we lay out the actions and who's responsible for those actions. And so we realized that this is a way to communicate. And as I look at at some of my staff that came tonight to support us, we realized that, some of our first graders need to know some high-frequency words, and our kids were still struggling, and we have one more quarter we're really trying to push those hard. And our music teacher said, well, I can make a song, and it will include those words. And our library teacher specialist said, when the 4th and 5th were talking about their nonfiction DI block, she said, well, I can own a piece of that goal, and that's where real power happens and real change, and that's why our kids are really doing well at Forest Park. So thank you. I know it was a rushed night for you, and I know it's going to be a long night, but I didn't want to rush my staff because they've put a lot of effort into preparing this for you tonight, and really it shows how much passion that they have when they're talking about their kids and they're talking about moving their kids forward, and that's really, at the end of the day, what it's all about. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Wendy. Wendy, I'd like to ask you, if you would, your staff has taken the time to be here tonight. Could you introduce them? Could you use the microphone, Wendy?
Brenda Glover, first grade teacher at Forest Park. Kate Duva, a 4th grade teacher at Forest Park. Deb Albin, a 3rd grade teacher at Forest Park. Michelle Haskell, our music teacher. And I think that's our staff that came tonight. But you can tell for a Tuesday night, it's a great showing here, and they really do believe in the work that they're doing, and they're making a big difference.
Well, I don't know what you folks are either drinking or eating down there, but your enthusiasm is very effective. Yes, Mrs. Benson.
I just could not let you all go without saying this. And as a school board member and a former educator, I have never seen so much enthusiasm. And I had to go catch the opportunity to come in your school to visit a friend of mine. And it's all there. And see, it's what we call, and I want to ask one of those ladies, your teachers, is your mother Anna Marie Nicoletti?
No, she's not.
I talked with her years ago, and she had enthusiasm just like you. And I like the 30-day objective, and it's all just like a Ferris wheel. Some of the things you're talking about, but your vocabulary is different, and it's hands-on teaching, getting to know your students. So congratulations, and I feel that I can't say enough for you, but when you go to school tomorrow, tell Michael I said hello.
Okay, we need to get back on track now. And normally at the beginning of our meeting, we start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do the roll call, and move forward with our agenda. You'd all rise, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, one God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Linda Avanzato. Here. Mel Boyd Benson.
Here.
Larry Cerisi.
Here.
William Mudge. Kimberly Page.
Here.
Joe Thompson.
Here.
Richard Welsh.
Here.
Julia Hell. Student representative. Thank you.
Would the clerk please call the calendars?
April 18th to 22nd is spring recess. Schools are closed. Friday, April 22nd, all offices are closed for Good Friday. April 26th, there's a school committee business meeting at 7 o'clock. May 5th is a budget subcommittee at 1 p.m. May 9th is a CLAC meeting at 7 o'clock in the admin building. 6:30 to 8:30 there is a wellness presentation, North Kingstown Goes Fresh. That will be in the North Kingstown Cafeteria and Media Center. May 16th, Policy Sub, 1 o'clock in the Administration Building. Thank you.
Are there any additions to the calendar? Hearing none. For citizens' comments, has anyone signed Dr. Roger?
Yeah, there are a couple of names.
Thank you. Susan Tavares? Citizens' comments are limited to 3 minutes. Should be limited to school committee business.
Susan Tavares, 123 Forest Drive. Just here to speak about my department and services. I thought Forest Park did a wonderful thing with their passion. My department has the same passion. The Coalition for Washington County, I'm inadvertently part of that. I've gotten at least 10 students this year on the program by my observation of watching these children mooch off of other children, and I'm like, something's going on here, and I brought it to the administrator's attention. They followed up on it. Next thing you know, that student is on my program. I've also done it myself, flagged the child over and had a conversation, and next thing you know, they're on our program, just by my observance, watching the children during lunchtime. My staff has that same passion as Forest Park has. We love the children of North Kingstown. We take very good care of them. Eventually, we will break even. We are going against the Rhode Island nutrition requirements, which is federal government also. 7 core items I usually get from the federal government, we're not getting anymore because of all the wars we're in now. So these are things we've normally never had to purchase, and now we do. We're doing everything in our power we work very hard in our department. We're grabbing extra funds wherever we can grab them, and I can just say that we're doing the best we can, and we'd like to continue to do the best we can for the children of North Kingstown. We adore them. We take very good care of them. And anytime, my invite goes to all. Stop by and have lunch and see what's going on in the program. You'll really be amazed. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry O's.
Terry O's, 40 Oakland Avenue. I just wanted to say that I was at the meeting 2 weeks ago, and when I left, I was really disgusted and upset about how the things had run throughout the meeting. Mr. Mudge, as we know, exempted the entire consent agenda because he felt like it was his right as a member of the school committee, and he had some comments to make about the superintendent, and I'll quote, "stuffing the consent agenda with non-routine business matters." Mr. Thompson had also written that, and I quote, "the superintendent and his tax-raising coalition are going to try to force through new 2-year contracts for 7 top administrators. It's on the consent agenda. In other words, they don't even want us to discuss it. Just vote yes." So Mr. Mudge exempted the entire 30-item agenda, which personally I found to be rude and disrespectful to the committee, to the administration, and to the people sitting in the audience. I can say that I think that there was a reason that those items were put on the consent agenda. It's because you don't get past the consent agenda because of all the conversation about items that don't need to be discussed. If the item is not on the consent agenda, it won't get discussed. If it's on the consent agenda, then the superintendent is criticized. So it looks like a case of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I find it preferable that the superintendent be damned on the side of getting something done. I also noticed that there's some misunderstanding by some members about the responsibility of a school committee member and the job description of the superintendent. So I did some research the last couple of weeks, and this is what I found out. Mr. Mudge is a graduate of URI and the Rhode Island School of Design, which I'm sure were excellent credentials for the career that he had. When asked why he was running for the school committee, he responded, and I quote, I was on the school committee before, and I was extremely confident, also extremely controversial because it's politics. Frankly, I always thought it was about education. Mr. Thompson, who took issue with the superintendent over personnel issues, has a BA from Knox College and an MS from Emerson College. Again, excellent credentials for his career. But I don't see anywhere that any of them have any background in education. When Mr. Thompson was asked at a Meet the Candidates interview, the question was, I'm a teacher and a parent with kids in the public school system. Why should I vote for you? And he responded, and I'll quote, the current majority on the school committee has shown you very clearly that they will fire any teacher or staff member they don't like without any regard to progressive discipline and the hell with NK taxpayers. Let them shell out $500,000 in taxes. You should be fearful. What if they don't like you? Because they'll fire you too. I'll hold their feet to the fire and make them give you a chance to improve, give you written guidelines about what you're doing wrong. Then, if you don't improve, give you a verbal reprimand, and then a written warning, then a day off, then a week, and then only then terminate you. If you put me on the school committee, I'll make sure your rights are protected. So I Googled Dr. Thornton, and this is what I found. Phil Thornton entered the teaching profession in 1988, initially as a long-term substitute teacher in 4 area school districts. Dr. Thornton spent several years in the classroom as a high school history teacher. He also coached the girls' cross-country and track and field teams. Dr. Thornton's educational administration experience includes the assistant principal position at Exeter West Greenwich High School, the director of curriculum and instruction at Exeter West Greenwich School District, the assistant superintendent position at the Charahoe Regional School District, the assistant superintendent of teaching and learning at NKSD, interim superintendent of schools for NKSD, and superintendent of schools for NKSD from March of 2009 to the present. Dr. Thornton earned a bachelor's degree in American Studies from Colby College, a master's degree in Education Administration from Providence College, and a doctorate in Educational Leadership from Johnson & Wales University. He's got a background in education. Then I looked up the school committee oath of office. Repeat after me. I, your name here, solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States of America, obey the laws of the United States of America, observe the provisions of Rhode Island, blah, blah, blah. I will always keep the benefit of the students in the forefront of decisions I make and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of school committee member. Nowhere does it say, I will be political, I will be controversial, I will support the taxpayers, I will keep teachers from getting fired, I will take over personnel issues from the superintendent, I will try to do my best to disrupt school committee meetings, and I'll be a general pain in the butt. It says, I will always keep the benefit of the students in the forefront of decisions I make and faithfully discharge the duties of the school committee member. Then I looked up the duties of the school committee member. Section 16-2-9, number 13 states, to give advice and consent on the appointment by the superintendent of all school personnel. Then I looked up the duties of the superintendent. Section 16-2-11, number 5 states, to have administrative responsibility for the school system. Number 7 states, to appoint all school department personnel with the consent of the school committee. So, I think we go to the chain of command. The superintendent and Maureen work for the school committee. Everybody else in the school department works for the superintendent, not for the school committee. And if you don't like what the superintendent is doing because he's not keeping the benefit of the students in the forefront of his decisions, you have 3 options. You can buy him out of his contract and try to hire a new superintendent. You can not renew his contract and try to hire a new superintendent, or you can let him do his job. And you'll notice I said, try to hire a new superintendent. It won't be a secret why he left. Let me close by refreshing your memories with our mission. Our mission is to educate our students to become intellectually active adults, to inspire them to reach individual excellence, and to challenge them to become responsible members of society. And just to reiterate, Rhode Island general law says, recognize that the first and greatest concern must be the educational welfare of the students attending public schools. It's not about the people that elected you. It's not about politics or taxes. It's about the oath you took to be the voice of the children in this district. if you're up there because it's politics and taxes, you should run for town council.
Okay, now we're going to move into correspondence. Is there any correspondence? Mrs. Page?
Yes, you know I have correspondence. So, I received correspondence not too long ago from Marissa Eisner over at DMS, who wanted to highlight one of their students. I usually ask the principals if they have any students or staff who they want us to highlight. And she brought to my attention Brandon Martinez, who is in 7th grade at DMS. And his hobby is racing cars. His accomplishments are that for the last 6 years, he's been in 150 races and has 90 trophies. He races quarter midgets and Ford Focus Young Guns midgets. He races in Thompson, Connecticut, and at the Little T Speedway for quarter midgets, and he's also raced in California at the Ford Focus midgets. He's been sharing his accomplishments with the DMS community, winning his first points championship, winning 2 races in a row, which is something I guess she said was very hard, being chosen for the Ron Sutton Winners Circle, and just amazing everybody as being part of the crew for the team. So it's something I hadn't heard of before. I thought it was a pretty outstanding accomplishment. I also received also from Ruth Ann Logan about the DMS Science Olympiad team. They were coached by Mrs. McAllister and Mrs. Rhodes, and I know that Joe was one of their helpers also. They came in 6th at the Science Olympiad this weekend up at Rhode Island College, and on their team they had Evan and Alex Bowen, Gregory Hamrick, Phoebe Hawks, Aaron Chili, Michael Moriso, Michael Potter, Siddharth Kopaka, William Andrews, Joshua Jonan, Colin Merritt, and Marina DeManuelian was one of their 9th graders who was helping them out. I don't have a list of the Wickford group, but I know that they came in first, and they were being coached by Mrs. LF, Mrs. LaPasta Fraser. Thank you. So congratulations to them. Unfortunately, I don't have their list of names. I know some of the kids, but I'm not going to name some of them because I'd forget the rest. I received correspondence from Edie Dunn highlighting the 2 long-term substitutes that they've had, Mr. Joshua DeWalt and also a Mr. Robert Lucas, just for said they're educators to watch in the future because of all of they've earned the respect and responsibility of keeping the students in focus and done just a great job. And she also highlighted Mia Douglas, a 3rd grader who performed solo at their recent Modern Citizen Assembly. I received correspondence from Randy Amelot about the very successful play, the Susical that they had at Forest Park, and she wanted to acknowledge Deborah Albin, Christina Nicoletti, Michelle Haskell, Ashley Longton, and John Garcia for all the work they did with the play. I wasn't able to see it, but I did see the costumes when I was there. The kids were in, and they were fantastic. One other person I received correspondence was Louise Danette, who wanted to acknowledge all of the work that Liz Tully had done for their school during Reading Week. She organized a wide variety of personalities for the community in the state, such as the governor, Lincoln Chafee, our attorney general for here in Rhode Island, the Carty brothers, several television personalities, and members of the central administration, including Dr. Thornton. And they had many URI and Providence College athletes who also came in to delight their students. And the other thing she wanted to remind everyone is that tomorrow night from 6 to 7:30, they're having their science fair and art show over at Susan M. Hensler, Knesset, from 6 to 7:30 if any of us can attend. Thanks. We did speak about something else, and
it slipped through the cracks.
Yes, and go ahead and have somebody else who's
Is there
shared,
anybody
and
else
maybe you
that has
can
correspondence?
remind me.
Yes, Mrs. Avasato.
Okay, a follow-up to one of the things that Kim just mentioned on the Science Olympiad. I got a phone call from a parent today and talking about funding. to send the students from Wickford Middle to Wisconsin for that competition. And they're looking for some help from the school committee. So we could put our heads together as to different ways we might be able to try and get some funding for some of those students. That would be great.
To that end, we actually had a conversation on that already just to get the ball rolling. In terms of policy, the Wickford Middle School teacher followed policy before the national event. She contacted me in case they made the nationals, and they have. So now we're looking at possibly 3 pathways, some funding from our budget, from Wickford Middle School's budget, and also fundraising. We have a month to get it done. It's around a $13,000 number.
We ought to share that before the meeting, we did all talk about having a dunk tank, but we weren't sure who would throw more balls at the dunk tank, if it would be citizens or if it would be each other. So,
Mrs. Benson.
I just want to say that having completed my career at Wickford Middle School, I went by today to congratulate the principal and all of the teachers, and I met the children who are going, and what a feat it is to know that Wickford Middle School is going to represent the state of Rhode Island. And in going there and being there, what I thought about was saying, it's very true. A house is not a home, and a school is not education until they all work together to build. And I talked with 6th grade teachers doing their lunch hour, Dr. Fun. I didn't go in the classroom. And 7th grade teachers. And it was a good feeling to know that each teacher on that staff felt that they had a part of it. And they did. Whether they told a kid who was at the locker, don't slam the door, or whatever it was, they had given them and had inspired them in some kind of way. And I hope that we, as a school committee, can find, that's the word we use, find a way to get those kids to Wisconsin without having to burden them and the schools and their parents with them going, because they are going to represent what all of us try to represent here. And what I say is, we have an excellent educator as our leader. And we've gotten to that place. We can see that. And for them not to have to be burdened with if we're going to get enough money, how we're going to get the money, so that they can focus on winning the national championship. I know a lot of times we put emphasis on sports, which is important, because it takes all of that to make the whole child. So later on in the meeting, I would like to make a motion at the proper time. And I heard you say that an item was going to be taken off the agenda. Am I correct? In executive session?
There are several items, yes.
Well, I would like to substitute the item for the sweatshirts, I'll call them that, and the amount of money that was going to be paid for them, that would be diverted to the students going to the National Science Olympiad.
We can't do that. It's not on the agenda.
I know it's not on the agenda. I said, you're taking it off, and I would like to substitute that. Would that be possible to substitute something else?
No, because if it's not advertised, it's not on the agenda and it can't be voted on tonight.
But it sounds like Dr. Thornton has a plan to fund that. It's to go to
Oh, I didn't know that, but
Yeah, we spoke to Mr. Merkel, I believe, yesterday, and we went through the first steps of how to make it happen.
okay, well, I'm hoping that it won't be a problem, that the children will have to think about that, and parents. And those are my concerns. Question?
Yeah. Mr. Thompson?
I believe one of the sponsors of the Science Olympiad is Raytheon, and I'm thinking maybe if an approach could be made to them, they might have a program whereby they sponsor the winning team or help.
We have a kind of a short fuse. You know, they're talking about the 19th and 20th of May, so we really got to get going.
Yes, that's why I mentioned it. I'm sorry I was out of order.
Okay. Mrs. Abbott, you had something else?
I just want to finish up the correspondence that I had. Just wanted to mention the mock trial team and Mr. Lopes, the instructor. They made it to the semifinals, and they were up against some schools that had that have a class in mock trial. So they were up against some pretty stiff competition, whereas our group is just, an after-school activity. So they did very well. I think it's the first time North Kingstown's made it to the semifinals, so I wanted to congratulate them. One quick thing in relation to one of the correspondence items on our agenda related to open meetings. Some school committee members have made the point that during public comment portion of the meeting, members can briefly answer citizens' questions or briefly respond to citizens' comments. I just wanted to say my understanding is the law permits that, but does not mandate that. The law does not mandate that. It's at the discretion of the chair, and depending upon how long that goes on, with 7 members up here, that could make correspondence or citizens' comments go on for hours. So that is at the chair's discretion, as I understand it. I just wanted to make that comment. One last quick thing. I would ask for an agenda item or a policy revision. We could maybe send this to policy subcommittee related to notices going out for CLAC meetings. I've had a request from a parent that the listserv be used regularly for those, and I believe it is at this point in time, but was asked if we could put that into a policy. So I will pass that along to the policy sub. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on with the agenda. We have the executive committee minutes. What's that?
Julia had a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Julia. Go ahead.
As Jamestown's representative here, I wanted to introduce for the public record correction as to the Jamestown per pupil cost figure of $25,000 that's now been cited by Mr. Munch at 2 meetings. That figure does, in fact, appear on the UCOA website. We have been promised an asterisk and a footnote, but it hasn't happened yet. So I just wanted to, since we've been answering lots of questions from Jamestown's citizens and taxpayers, I wanted to make sure North Kingstown had the reason for that inflated figure as well. The figure, unfortunately, in order to not double count students, the 208 or so students that we send to your high school are actually counted as part of your total, not ours. And so what they do in UCOA is divide our total expenditures, which includes that $2 million plus in tuition that we pay for those students, but it only divides that figure of our total expenditures by 70% of our student population, which is our K-8 students. So that yields a corrected per pupil cost, still high, of around mid-17,000s. It is absolutely not $25,000. Just wanted to correct the public record over here, the way we have been correcting it in Jamestown.
It's just because you folks over there are unique.
Yeah. Well, actually, Little Compton's in the same boat, but we're the only ones. And the high school tuition cost doesn't even appear in the category for high school costs. It's another very annoying problem with UCOA. It appears as other costs, and those other costs are divided among our total population. So it looks as though we're spending approximately $5,000 per child
K through 12 or K through 8, because they're the only kids that they count as Jamestowners for this miscellaneous stuffing.
It would seem to be an easy math problem that they can't seem to figure out.
They cannot.
That they haven't been able to figure out.
All they said they could do to solve it is the asterisk.
They haven't been able to figure out Central Falls, so I guess, this is more difficult. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you for clarifying that, Julia, for the public.
Okay. Moving on to the executive session.
Mr. I believe we need to hold this till we go, we've got to go back to executive session tonight. So
okay.
we can
All right.
leave B until after we go back to executive session.
Okay. Then moving on to the consent agenda. First of all, I'd like to make you aware that there are several items on the consent agenda that are being tabled. E1 on the Grogan Marciano for the football jerseys. Mr. Marcello, the athletic director, will be at our next meeting to explain the whole process so that this panel, along with the community, will be made aware of exactly what transpired in coming up with this. The thing that everyone should be aware of is that while the total cost is $7,000, half of that is paid for by the school department and half is paid for by
Football Association.
Football Association. So the out-of-pocket from the school department is $3,500. That's not an excuse for overpaying if that's what it turns out to be. That's just an explanation that what the total bill is. The second item is the radios. I've asked that this be tabled so we could get some further information on these radios to see whether or not there is an alternative that would cost less money. The last item, Ned, I have to ask you about item number 3 on the award for the Urbane Construction Company for the lavatories at Wickford Middle. I'm privy to an email from the facilities chair that questioned some of the things about Urbane. He said he had not received a response from you as of this afternoon. I'm concerned that some of his questions need to be answered prior to going forward with this. Is there any immediate need that we can't put this off until the next meeting? So that I would say that we'd also table that one as well. Are there any items on the consent agenda that people would like to exempt at this point in time? Mr. Cerisi?
I believe there's just some minutes on there that, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to...
End of consent, okay.
Yeah, I believe there's some executive session minutes that I need to abstain from the vote on because I was not present at those executive session meetings, so I'm going to exempt C 2 and 3.
Why would you exempt and just not abstain at the vote?
Because then I would have to abstain for the whole consent agenda.
Okay.
So I'm going to exempt C 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, all right. Is there any other exemptions from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, we need to change something on the G needs to say approval of memorandum of agreement, not approval of non-renewal.
Right.
That's a change.
Right.
And H is going to require a motion, so you might want to exempt H so that we can make a separate motion.
Okay. All right. Did everyone understand that? G is a memorandum of agreement, not a non-renewal. And H, we need to have a motion on that. Okay. Yes, Mr. Cerisi?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further exemptions at this time, I'll make a motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items.
Question?
Second. Okay. Mr. Thompson?
Just so I can ask a question about it. F5, please. I won't be long.
F. Oh, it's what is your question, Mr. Thompson?
My question was, do we have any system whereby when we're going to increase an FTE it says non-budgeted, and I just wanted to find out a little bit of detail, that's all.
Actually, when that comes up, I brought Ms. Santa tonight for that very reason. Ms. Santa's here to speak.
But if it's on the consent agenda, then I can't ask the question, that's why.
You can pull it.
At this time, I'll offer a motion to exempt F5 for Mr. Thompson.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So then the only thing that we're exempting is F5, G,
And C1, 2, and 3.
H, and C1, 2, and 3.
Yep. And at this time, I'll again offer a motion to approve all non-exempted consent agenda items.
Second motion.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay.
At this time, I'll make a motion to approve agenda items C1, 2, and 3.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention. Okay. Okay, now we're moving down to F5.
It's for Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Thompson's question. Dr.
I can start, and Ms. Santa can help me with this also. Certainly being sensitive to anything that's unbudgeted, we have had a conversation all year long about our capacity to actually maintain our program with the students we have. And as you know, special ed can be kind of fluid with students in, students out. It's gotten to a critical mass point now in April that we have to increase the positions. So, Ms. Santa, if you could...
Yeah, I'm actually quite proud of the team because we felt we were anticipating that this might occur back in November, but they've been able to hold the teams together and be able to service the children. We're required by federal and state regulation to provide services for students starting on their 3rd birthday. We have approximately 6 students. One has already entered, and we have 5 to 6 more coming in over the next month that we're required to provide service. These are not students who just have, walk-in service needs, like coming in just to get a speech language. We're talking about students with significant behavioral, significant special needs that require multiple services, and the only way we can do that is providing a program. We have designed our programs to be fluid and be able to take on as many kids as we can, but there are also legal limitations. Like we can only have we have a cap on our programs that we have to follow, and there's also a requirement as to how many community peers that we have within our programs. So at this point, if this does not get approved, I'm unable to service 5 students that we know are coming in by the end of May, and that doesn't even include what happens in June. Because unlike other school programs, we have to take them starting with they're exactly on their 3rd birthday or in violation of the regulations. So.
Ms. Santa, if we don't increase the .5, what are the other options?
What I'll have to do if I don't increase that position is I'll have to place those students in out-of-district placements. Keep in mind the cost of those starts at about $242 a day.
Okay, thank you.
And that doesn't include the additional services that they'll need.
Are these
Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
Are these students in all different schools?
Yeah, our preschool program is in Fishing Cove, but it serves the entire district.
Okay. All right, so all the teachers and the staff that we're speaking about are centralized in one school?
Correct. We have all our preschools in one place in order, again, to maximize our services and be efficient. I think I talked before, at this probably before you came on board, we had to increase our preschool program by half before school even started in order to meet the needs of what we're seeing. And just to piggyback on what you saw earlier with COSI, we identify our kids through our screening process. We are actually well known for the high quality of our screening process in North Kingstown. We have some of the highest trained people that screen. We also look at NK Connect to identify students, which is all required by law, that we outreach and look for those kids with disabilities.
Mr. Cerisi.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further questions or discussions, I'll offer a motion to approve agenda item F5 at this time.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Linda's not here, so...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item G, Memorandum of Agreement of Administrator.
I'll make a motion that we approve the memorandum of agreement.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Linda is still not here. Okay. Item number H.
Mr. Chair, I recommend that you make the following agreement. You accept the memorandum of agreement as agreed to in executive session regarding the resignation of a custodian at Davisville Middle School and authorize the chairman of the school committee to sign the agreement. That's what I recommend you make as your motion.
Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
I second it.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Again, Mrs. Avisano is not here. Okay, continuing on unfinished business. Is there anything on the school budget 2010-2011?
In 2010-11, the only thing I would tell the committee is we continue to watch the bottom line and continue to strive to finish black. I say this as we get almost daily news of new variables that come at us, like a 0.5 preschool. So we will continue to try to tighten the belt and restrict costs where we can.
Any questions from the committee? I guess, Mrs. Page.
So, Dr. Thornton, at this time you're saying that we don't need to, in other years around this time period, we've made sure that we've cut, we've not had any further spending, we've funded, but you don't feel as if at this time we need to do that?
So what I'm saying is we put a freeze on back in the wintertime. What I'm saying now is we're almost going to another level of freeze where, to the point where last week we had a PO in for, I think, $2,000 for a subscription. It was already in the business office. We went over and we pulled it and stopped it. I'm looking at every expense we can pull or stop to offset things like the 0.5 increase in the preschool. And we're looking everywhere right now.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions on the 2010-2011 budget? Okay. On the 2011-2012 budget, Dr. Thornton.
In terms of that, I would just open to any questions you may have as we keep moving. As you know, last night we met with the town council and had the conversation with them on that. One thing I would point the committee to is the cafeteria conversation. It's really two conversations. And this first one, you see number 1 here under budget. We're looking for the committee to set aside monies to cover our estimated loss for next year with the cafeteria. That's what we have to do now. We can't just put a loss in the system. We're saying to you, we're estimating a loss of $64K in the CAF fund for 2012. So we would look to you to allow us to set aside that amount from fund balance to cover it.
Any questions? Mrs. Benson.
Not a question, but an observation. I'm sure you were watching it very closely, Dr. Thornton. Now they are voting on the articles in the budget. And Article 5 through 10 is going to be putting a lot of expense back to the schools that we once enjoyed that the state was taking. And I'm glad to hear you say that it's going to be tight, and all of us know it's tight. And to give you an example of one is that they're going to have us, if the article passes, to pay for students in state custody, like when we sent them maybe to a state home or something of that kind up at the prison or something. We are going to have to pay for that. And I spend a little bit of my time letting the people on finance know that these things are cutting the heart out of the town's budget. That's just one example. The next example, I think there's one that directly affects us and with children, is Article 10. If a child is enrolled in North Kingstown schools, before we used to say the money follows the child. But we are going to be responsible for that. we will have to, like if we send a kid to Bradley, and I expressed it to someone that we had the best educational system because of the fact that you have been working to get the students back in the district. And this is the time that we will see the fruits from it. Because Article 5 from Article 10 is going to be very, very hurting to education. They're all related to education and the finances. So I have to congratulate you about having the preschool and getting that done. And as you said, we're just going to have to tighten our belts because we don't know what we're going to get from the state, and national is just as bad. And they seem to be turning a blind ear to it up at state. But we know one day we're going to, and pretty soon, we're going to have to face it. So thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Page.
Dr. Thornton, how does this compare we're estimating $65,000 in estimated loss for next year? How does that compare with what we're doing? That's going down, correct?
Right now, we're tracking larger than that. If memory serves me correctly, we're tracking around 120, 130.
It's actually climbed to, it's close to 150 now.
Right now, the year we're in, we're saying next year, coupled with negotiations, we would estimate it to be 64. We achieve some changes in the contract. Currently, this year, tracking 150. Next year, looking for 64. It's a loss either way.
Are you looking for a motion on that tonight?
Yes, I am.
And or do you have any particular place that would we be taking this out of fund balance? Is that what you're proposing?
Yes.
Well, I'll make the motion that we take the proposed $64,470 estimated loss out of FY12 out of fund balance.
Second.
But to further talk about that, I think, Dr. Thornton, you and I had a conversation that I am concerned about the amount of money that we're taking out of our fund balance for next year. And so I guess next time we meet, I would like if we could have some proposals of some alternatives rather than taking out the full $1.1 million. And like I said, I said it to you, but I know you're not prepared to talk about it today, so that would be a conversation for next time that I'd like to talk about, because I'm getting nervous about just the amount of money that we are taking out of fund balance. And if we can find other cuts so we wouldn't have to take out quite as much, I would feel better about that.
One of the items that I would like to see happen for that meeting is that we have a survey for the committee that shows what the other school districts are charging for their meals. I'd like to know that we are in the same ballpark for the food service that we're providing, that other districts are providing. I understand, just like everyone else, about times are tough and dollars and so forth and whatnot, but we need to make sure that we're in the right market price range for the services we're providing. Yes, Mr. Thompson.
I would just like to add, perhaps when we have that discussion at the next meeting, I'm just curious to hear an overview of why we keep hearing from, I think there were some speakers at the last night's meeting, who talk about other school districts that actually make money on their food service. And why is it that we're so far in the rears? And I don't need to have the answer now, but just as a part of this whole thing.
We want this quick answer. Most districts have gravitated away from self-operation, where they now have companies like Sodexo or Chartwell's run them. South Kingstown, for example, has, I think, Chartwell's, and they have a contract that guarantees a no-loss contract. If a loss happens, the company eats the loss.
East Greenwich had a problem with their vendor where they had a $165,000 loss, okay, that they wanted to collect from East Greenwich. And they also had a situation where they were promised a $5,000 check at the end of the school year. outsourcing of food service is a discussion all by itself. And I'd almost suggest, Joe, that you talk to our Director of Food Service, Trish Cawley, to get a little background on what some of the problems are. Not that we can't discuss it here, but I think that would help you in then asking for additional information. Trish has a wealth of information. We've been going round and round about this. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No. Okay. So there's been a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion on the item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, carries unanimously. Is there anything on the CIP, existing bond, future bond, that we need to talk about tonight, Dr. Thornton?
Nothing from me, Mr. Draper. Anything on the CIP?
Just SMMA is going to get back to us with a conversation they had with RIDE. I believe we had sent some communication in that regard. Once we have something in writing from them, we'll forward it on, and also I plan to ask the facility subcommittee to have a meeting at that time so we can meet with them, and then they can react to that and send that information on to the school committee. I did speak with Mr. Fournette. He said that somewhere between the initial no that RIDE issued in person to an addition, after having conversation with SMMA, he believes that it's more likely it'll be a modified or smaller addition, but one is necessary to meet what RIDE's expectations are. So once we're hoping for next Wednesday of next week to set that up. We'll go from there.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to approval of a resolution. You have a resolution in your package regarding opposing the binding arbitration and continuation of contracts for teachers. There's pending legislation up at the State House right now. Is there a motion on that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on it? Mr. Thompson?
If we do eliminate binding arbitration, when the contract comes to an end, what happens? What ensues besides chaos?
We don't presently have binding arbitration. We have binding arbitration in non-monetary matters, but right now there is no binding arbitration in monetary matters. What happens in a contract, and if continuation of a contract doesn't pass. So if contract continuation doesn't pass, what will happen is most districts will follow the decision as it was in East Providence. In East Providence, the decision that came down was once you go through good faith negotiations, once you go through good faith mediation, and once you go through good faith arbitration, if you cannot come to an agreement or accept an arbitrator's award at that point, then school districts have a right to make unilateral changes to the contract. But you've got to go through all of the steps first before that happens. Binding arbitration would basically force you to arbitration, and then once you go to arbitration, whatever decision the arbitrator makes would be binding, and the school committee would be forced to accept the arbitrator's award.
Currently, Joe, we operate under NLRB regulations, which does not require binding arbitration in these matters, nor contract continuation. Many instances, Warwick, I think, was out for 5 years on a teacher's contract, on contract continuation. It doesn't help to settle the problem. If there isn't a need or a reason, in real estate they would call it time is of the essence, there isn't some motivation to move forward and settle by both sides, not just one, then nothing happens, and that doesn't help the problem. So it's not good for the kids, it's not good for the district, it's not good for the town. So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Did you get that, Laurie? Thank you. Okay. Next item is request for a decision regarding legal counsel representation.
I think we were going to put that one off at the request of Linda.
Linda's here.
She's here. Well, I know what it was about. I know that Bill had asked that this be on the agenda, that we take a look, as we've done other years when we've had a new school committee rollover, and that we go out for bid for our legal representation again. Not saying anything against Mary Ann. It's merely of just making sure that we look at all our contracts, just like we've done in our contracts for the RFPs that we've gone out for janitorial services and other things. So I know what Dr. Thornton has recommended, and I see here what's being passed out. I guess I would make the motion that we go ahead and go out to bid for the legal representation.
I second the motion. Dr. Thornton's information didn't reach soon enough.
What's that?
We're just getting his information, so.
Discussion, Mrs. Avazzano.
Just a couple of points. To my mind, the reason we would be looking at contracts, such as, the reason we would be looking at arrangements, whether they be contracts or not, would be financial, from my perspective. The sole reason we would consider even looking at outsourcing anything that we're talking about, to my mind, again, is solely financial. And it's my understanding that the current agreement that we have right now with Mary Ann Carroll, we basically cannot beat that price. I don't know where you would go, and Dr. Thornton did look at some numbers around the state of other school districts, and we are at pretty much the lowest rate you can get. And I think we need to seriously consider this before we go spending more money for basically no reason that I can see. I mean, when Mary Ann bid on the services previously, she was a sole practitioner and was able to bid at an extremely low rate due to that reason. Now she's with a firm. So, and they kindly enough agreed to honor her previous commitments. However, if we go out to bid, we will lose this excellent rate that we have. We will also lose an excellent attorney. I've been involved in watching municipal and school government for 10 years. I've seen a lot of solicitors and a lot of counselors, and many of them, just to my mind, they kind of go along with whatever the committee wants or whatever maybe the superintendent or the town manager wants. And I don't find that to be the case with Mary Ann. I don't necessarily agree with everything Mary Ann says, and she knows that. But she's always said that regardless of who the majority of a committee is, she really doesn't care. She gives her honest legal opinion on something. I respect that. I think we have a valuable asset here, and I don't understand why we talk about cutting the budget, and then we do take actions that really have absolutely no basis in any financial responsibility.
Yes. Dr. Thornton.
Just to echo my two handouts in this packet, if you will. In our current attorney, we have a former superintendent and an education lawyer. As you know, education law is extremely complex and fast-moving, and I just want to reiterate, I find it very valuable to have the resource we have right now in Ms. Carroll.
Is there any other discussion? Mrs. Benson?
I didn't second the motion because I didn't think that she wasn't performing the duty. But as everything else go out for contract, let's keep consistency. And of course, an attorney is important to the school committee. And I say to the school committee. And there is a place between the school committee's attorney and the town's attorney. Because at one time, I think we had some deals that say that the school committee wouldn't have an attorney, that the town solicitor would do the work for the schools, and that we may have an attorney if we choose. And we chose to have an attorney, and we know what the attorney is doing. So what's the trouble about going out to bid? We go out to bid for everything else. Let's just take that as the way we do the regular business.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
And that's mine.
Yes, Mrs. Epstein?
I just want to add to, again, point out Mary Ann's expertise. She's been a teacher, she's been a principal, she's been a superintendent, she's been a state representative, and she's an expert in special education law. And we've got an awesome rate. And the reason why we don't go out to bid is because we are getting a great deal. You go out to bid when you want to try and save money. That's how I see it. And I see this as a, just, I don't understand. It's pointless as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I respectfully disagree with you.
Excuse me.
I think it's a matter of
Excuse me,
taking
this
care of
is not a
business.
debate,
Okay,
back
thank
and
you.
forth. Thank you. Everyone has had the opportunity to say something. Now, I'd like to add that that Mrs. Benson, you just talked about consistency in practice. How about consistency in legal representation? That if you were to lose your current legal advice, goes out the window, and you bring in somebody else, and you have to start all over from square one. That's consistency. Now, just excuse me.
Okay, well, you finish.
Yes, please. Let me finish.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Now,
you.
when we talk about
I
dollars,
do have a right.
you know, Mrs. Benson, you have to stop talking and allow somebody to speak. Stop the conversation. Thank you very much. Now, as it relates to the budget and dollars, I'm getting tired of people saying at this table, I am going to cut the budget. I'm going to do everything I can to save money. And you know right well, it's been proven to you in print, A, that the current legal representative has agreed to hold her price for another 12 months, barring we don't go out for an RFP. B, that you know that it was given to you that a survey done by the superintendent for your express information shows that the rates that we are paying are less than the other districts in this county and nearby. I'm sorry, I cannot allow it to go unsaid that those people who talk about saving money are going to knowingly go out for an RFP that's going to cost us money when it appears the only reason you're going to go out for it, whether it's said or not, is because you don't agree with the decisions that have been given and it's a personality thing. You can dispute that if you want, but if you talk about dollars and cents, then you have to address the issue and say, I want to spend money. Now, I sit here time and time again trying to figure out how to save nickels and dimes for this community. And I'm going to do it again. And you're going to sit there and laugh, Mrs. Benson. It's not funny. You keep on preaching to us about how the people in this community, they don't have the money to pay the taxes, etc. Well, why are you spending their money? You don't have an answer, do you?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Mr.
I
Cerisi.
certainly do. And give me the courtesy of giving you an
I'll
answer.
defer to Mrs. Benson. I'll follow her if that's okay, Mr.
Yes, Mrs. Benson.
Yes, I'm concerned about the people of this community. And I'm concerned, very much concerned, about the school committee. Now, you can shout, you can preach, and I'll still have my same ideas. You won't change them, and I will still believe. And as far as what you say you get for nothing, sometimes the cheapest isn't the best. I have my reasons, and if you'd like for me to give them to you, there have been decisions made that members of this school committee could not access certain things. But you go to a state meeting and the whole case of North Kingstown is in a magazine. The whole case is in a magazine. And no, it's not personality. I serve with the attorney in the General Assembly. It's the fact of fairness and right. I can show you many, many, many cuts from the video that when certain people ask questions, they wait until certain ones give them the answer. And before you became chairman, now that you're dealing more directly, I think you had a few things that you wasn't satisfied with the legal opinion. And so, I'm not changing. I'm not changing. It may be for the detriment of it, but I think we should go out, and if she brings in the best bid, then that's who we'll have, with the understanding that she is the chairman of all members of the school committee. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was ruled out of order when it was right in the book. Right in the book, in the new revised division. So be it. If she wins, she wins.
Thank you, Mrs. Spencer. Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick comments. This discussion of RFPs and bids and trying to save money or whatnot is smoke and mirrors. The simple truth and the simple fact of the matter is there's committee members who have a personal axe to grind. And I think that's very unfortunate to the school district, the students, and the taxpayers, because we're wasting an awful lot of time on this topic, as it's been on several school committee meeting agendas, rather than moving ahead with the true business of the taxpayers and the true business of education and the students. We're wasting time on this, what is essentially political nonsense. So I heard Mrs. Benson mention, let's remain consistent and send out RFPs and bids, like we have on other agenda topics in the past, but yet 2 meetings ago she voted against sending out RFPs and bids for custodian services and transportation services. So again, let's be honest. Fact of the matter is, rather than getting into the personalities, I choose to focus on the facts in our budget. From 2007 until today, we are spending 56% less on legal fees than we were spending in 2007. Okay, our legal representative is charging us the same rates that she began charging us, I believe, 2.5 or 3 years ago. The rates have not increased. So, again, that there's some financial savings to be achieved here is disingenuous, to say the least. So, I would ask that we stick to the issues here rather than voting on personalities. And to me, the issues is what were we spending on legal services in the past? What are we spending today? And how well the district's been represented. This school committee, this administration, this legal counsel inherited a mess that was left over from the past corrupt administration and the past school committees that served this district. Okay, it cost some money to clean up that mess, but we have cleaned up that mess, and it's in the name of trying to move forward on some of these things. So I'll stop at that.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a vote on this. I have a roll call vote, please.
Can you read again the motion?
Motion was made by Kim Page to go out for bid for legal representation, seconded by Mel Benson. Linda Avanzato. No. Belvoy Benson.
Yes.
Larry Cerisi.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
No.
Motion fails 3-3.
Okay, that's it. Stays the way it is. Okay. Next item is on the reconsideration of the withdrawal from Sirico. Dr. Thorne.
Thank you. Sometime back in March, the districts that were still remaining in Sirico reconsidered their position. If you recall, back around 2 months ago, several districts pulled out of Sirico, NK being one of them. The reason for the districts pulling out was some actions taken by Sirico as a whole. In summary, Sirico districts were going to try to sell the building, the asset, but hibernate Streetco and kind of continue the relationship, and that caused concern with a lot of the other districts. Back end of March, the remaining Streetco districts restated their position and said, we are now saying to the other districts, we will sell the building and close Streetco when it's sold. No more hibernation, we're just going to end our relationship. So having heard that, they've asked all the other districts to reconsider their withdrawal. I told them I'd bring it to the committee. I would recommend we rescind our letter of pulling out, if you will, and be involved with them as they sell the building and close the building.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Cerisi.
I know there's more discussion to have, or there may be questions, comments, or further discussion from committee members on this agenda item, but in the spirit of trying to move things along, I'll just put a motion on the table at this time to approve the superintendent's recommendation to withdraw our letter to Sirico.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Do we have a UCOA update?
Nothing at this time. I would just point the committee to our recent newsletter of April 1st for any information on UCOA.
Okay, first read on new policy, Mrs. Page.
All right, what you've received tonight is a new policy called GCF. This was written by our attorney. This lays out a different, it follows the BEP in talking about how we're going to promote, retain, select our staff. It follows along the line of selecting the most highly effective staff rather than what we've done in the past. We have passed, this policy was sent over a couple months ago to the union president, so they have had the opportunity to take a look at this. We're not voting on this tonight. This is merely a first read because this is a new policy. So I don't know if there's any other questions about this. You can read what's in here. But it is fairly extensive. It will be a big change from how we've done things in the past. But it's moving in the direction that the commissioner is asking us to move in. So I would say this will be something that is good for us, and it's following along with the vision that the commissioner has for the state.
So we don't need to vote on it?
No, we don't need to vote on it. I bring it up now, and it's the only policy on our agenda tonight. It's more for people to comment. If people have questions about it, to bring them up now, because what will happen is then at our April 26th, 28th meeting, basically at that point we'll have a second read. And so at the first read, we mainly do this so that then if people see grammatical errors or they don't understand why we're doing this, that they can bring it up now. And then at the second read, hopefully, if there's no other questions, then we pass it.
Mrs. Avisado.
Just very quickly, kudos to Dr. Thornton for putting this, for having Mary Ann work on this, because this is what everybody's talking about in terms of not having just pure tenure. And it's a difficult thing to do when you're moving from the way things have always been and trying to craft something new and doing it with respect and cooperation with our teachers, which Dr. Thornton has. So I wanted to say this is a great first step on this, and the policy looks good, and thank you, Kim.
Any other comments on the...
Kudos to Kim for getting rid of 5 previous policies and replacing with one.
Well, we'll do that next meeting. So we'll delete the policy, but we didn't want to delete the policies ahead of time until the new one is approved.
No. Okay.
So yes, when we approve this next time, there will be 5 that we get rid of.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on then. I'm sorry, Mrs. Benson.
I just wanted to make a comment on the policy and say congratulations to Kim, and that is one of the policies that they, and Dr. Thornton, that they will be doing away with at the state level. So North Kingstown is still above the norm yet. We will be first. That will be something we won't have to revisit.
Our superintendent set that as a priority.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right.
Oh, we know we got the best, Miss Altazano, in education.
All right. The next item under new business is, it says here, re-election of school committee chairperson, vice chairperson. What?
There's nobody here to move it.
You know, I know why this was put on the agenda. I guess I would ask that we take a motion to take that off the agenda because because I don't think this is the way that you handle things. I think that we as a school committee, we need to handle our differences, and if we have a personal issue with somebody, that this should be something that should be taken up with the person one-on-one. I'm not going to advocate that we're going to sit here and be stabbing each other all over the back and making a mess of the committee. We need to move forward. We all said that we are here for the kids, and I would much rather say my motion would be to take this off the agenda and to move forward and not do this.
Mrs. Absato.
I just want to acknowledge that this wasn't Kim's idea, nor do I think she was slightly horrified. But I want to say that I think that she and Mr. Welch are doing a good job, and I think they're trying to work together, and I just think we need to leave it at that.
Mrs. Benson.
I certainly wasn't behind it because I nominated Mr. Welch, and that's why he's chair. And of course, according to Robert Rules of Order, it's out of place anyway, because the person who makes the nomination and vote in affirmative is the only one can put it back on the agenda. But there seems to be a like for a baby Ruth. Everybody want to say Benson. Boy, I'm enjoying that popularity that I'm accused of. And I'm so proud that you're not working with the man upstairs, because he wouldn't hear a thing I say when I thank him for a day's living. Everything seems to be put on me. We used to have a senator named Lloyd Benson, and I thought he was good, from Texas. He wasn't outstanding. But it's the easy word.
Thank you, Mrs. Benson.
Yes, and I would ask that you not holler at me anymore and speak to me in that tone.
The next item is the extent and volume of work required regarding school committee members' requests for information. This was put on because the school committee clerk, quite frankly, is only on for 20 hours a week. Some members have been looking for excessive information that not only is taking a lot of time, but is also starts running into a lot of money. And it has to come up with the idea, and I'll ask Dr. Thornton to speak on this, that what is the point of asking for all this information at times? Where are we going with this information? And what Dr. Thornton and the school committee clerk are looking for is some direction from this committee to say, you know, at what point does the request come to this committee for approval? Now, we're not talking about 1 or 2 pages of information. We're talking about volumes of information. And Dr. Thornton, I'd like you to address that.
I think you really spoke to Mr. Welch. The issue is when the request would stop our production of work during the workday, and have us produce voluminous spreadsheets over half a decade, and recreate spreadsheets, things like that. We'll certainly do it, but if the request, in my opinion, is voluminous, I'd want your vote to do that before we do it, because otherwise I'm fearful we will be doing many of these and we'll be losing productivity during the day.
Mrs. Page.
I guess I can understand the predicament you're being in. I would say, so how do we want to set this up as a committee as to when things get put on the agenda and when they don't? I'm just thinking, this past week I had a request, and now my request was only, I think it ended up being 6, 7 pages for just knowing what the music department was. but it was just one of those things, like, it wasn't a usual request, and so it's at what will be our gauge then, so that we can have something a little bit more concrete of saying when something should come for the whole committee and when it should just be for just you to say something.
Just one quick thought would be, I think I would certainly interact with the chair and vice chair on requests, and when I get those that I think are, oh, this is one of those, I talk to the chair and vice chair about why I think it is one of those items.
Yeah, I certainly don't have any problem with that. Mrs. Avsano?
I was just going to concur with that in terms of Dr. Thornton recognizing when the request would require reams of information and lots of time, then you could go to the chair and vice chair, and if necessary, come to the committee for a vote if it's overly onerous.
Is there any more discussion on it? Mrs. Benson?
Are we going to leave that entire decision upon two people, the chair and the vice chair?
It comes to the vote.
No,
I said to the committee for a vote.
Usually it runs in 3, 5s, or 7, you know.
I think if Kim and I can agree to go ahead and do it, then that doesn't need to come to the committee. If we are in a disagreement either amongst ourselves or in total, then if the request, the person who's requesting it says, well, we'll bring it to the committee, then
and how will that fit in with the new rule on access to information that they're debating on up where you work?
I have no idea, ma'am.
I think that's one of the bills that they consider asset to public records.
Mr. Cerisi?
Mr. Chairman, just quick brief comment. I've served on this committee while Dr. Thornton was the assistant superintendent, and now the superintendent. As I served as the vice chairman and chairman of this committee, and now as a member of this committee. And I have to say, in all my experience and what I bear witness to, Dr. Thornton has always been very accommodating in providing information to committee members and to the public that's requested of him, as well as his administrative team out at the central office. So I know for him to even take the step of bringing this to the committee's attention and raising some concern that some of these requests have to be totally over the top. So I would just ask that we're mindful of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and try to use a social gauge for that if possible.
Okay. It really didn't require any action, it's just more of a discussion.
It was a discussion and a suggestion of the 3, 5, or 7, and I'm sure we wouldn't have to have 5. Be left with you and the chair.
The next item is employee suggestion email financial incentive. I think we can put that off until another meeting. There's no urgency there on that. Are there any special reports? Any standing committee reports? Any ad hoc committee reports? Mrs. Page.
I'll just real quickly announce that the Wellness Committee is having a, it's called MK Gets Fresh on May 9th. That's a Monday night. And basically what we're doing is we're having a movie about fresh foods and composting over over how you can get fresher foods when you use composting. The movie will be shown in the media center here in the high school, and then afterwards we'll be going over to the cafeteria to be making newspaper pots and be talking more. We'll have a number of activities with kids to be talking about composting. It's an event that is open to the entire community. We're starting to advertise. And so it's just kind of broadening the wellness things that we touch on.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Mr. Cerisi?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further action at this time, I'll make a motion that we recess back into executive session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the public meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for staying and being patient with us this evening.